If you're wondering why you don't see a lot of trad wife content from women who are sort of 35 and above, it's because they end up like me. Hi, for those of you who don't know, I was a stay-at-home housewife from when I was 17 to nearly 27. What my life looked like for that decade was essentially I waited for him to come home for about 10 years. By the time I was 21, I had 2 kids under 3, and so that took up an enormous amount of my time. They were only allowed to go to a Steiner Waldorf school under his rules, which basically means no tech, no screen time. They learn how to do things with like wool and clay, and it's actually really culty. And I personally wouldn't have picked that, but what he said went. I was incredibly submissive, and I loved him absolutely unconditionally, regardless of what he did to me. And yes, this was also a very abusive relationship, but I don't think that's necessarily typical to the degree that it happened to me, to everyone in these kinds of relationships. I was very fortunate that I worked part-time some of that time, although it was really hard for me to hold down work because my work was never prioritized and I'd only work like 7 hours a week anyway. So not enough to have financial independence, but enough to have a little bit of like pocket money, although he would often dip into that as well. The industry I worked in and like got any kind of education in, because I wasn't allowed to go to uni, was the beauty industry, because that was considered safe because I wouldn't have male co-workers and therefore I wouldn't have male friends, and I wasn't allowed to talk to male friends anyway, even the ones I'd been friends with for like over a decade at that point. I wasn't allowed to get tattoos. He had absolute say over what I looked like. He would decide how I dressed, how I wore my hair, and if I changed things without like asking him first, he would put me down either very directly telling me I looked awful or indirectly by saying, oh, I liked how I looked before, and he'd hassle me with it until I changed it to a way that he deemed acceptable. A really fun thing about that is I figured out years later that he actually just encouraged me to look like the women he was cheating on me with, so that's fun. I learned how to cook like a chef because his expectation was, from the time I was, again, 17 years old, was that I made everything from scratch with fresh ingredients, so I went to the supermarket every single day. But because I wasn't allowed to drive, I had to walk to the supermarket or take like buses and trains, and a lot of the time he wanted really niche food that meant I had to go on missions all over town, and that would take up my whole day with my toddlers in a pram wandering around. And so what happens is eventually these women make friends. I made friends with other mothers because my children started school and I realized something actively bad was happening to me. I made a plan and I left. It took me 2 years. And so that brings you to why you don't see women who are older, who are mid-30s, mid-40s and up, making trad wife content. When you leave, you have no ability to make your own money. You have no financial independence. So do you know what you have to do? You have to go study. You have to get a job. You have to figure out how to untangle all of his wants over your needs, which takes forever. Case in point, I am 34 years old. I have just started an undergrad degree and I have just learnt how to drive. And those two things are absolutely incredible. The first thing I did when we broke up, when I had a bit of money to spare, I got tattooed because I was finally allowed to make decisions about my own body. My hair has been every color and length you could possibly imagine since we broke up because I get to make decisions about how I look. The thing is, the longer that you're in a relationship like this, in a way, it was kind of fortunate for me that there were more urgent factors that made me leave sooner, but I am still a good 10, 15 years behind everyone else my age in terms of setting up my finances, in terms of building a career for myself. If you've been in this relationship since you were like 18 and you are now 40, 50 or above, you have no idea how to make a career happen. And because you've got so many gaps in your resume, again, I was fortunate that I work part-time, you're not getting a job. You don't get to have any kind of life. You will be destitute forever. And I also feel like, and I can't relate to this because when we broke up, my children were still in elementary school, but I feel like if you've been in this relationship for decades, your grown-up children are probably also going to be really entitled because they've been raised on the belief that they can treat you like this because that is the norm. And so there are so many of us who have been in these kinds of relationships. I see them all over this app who are in their 30s, 40s and 50s who have left these kinds of relationships, who are like, for the love of God, don't do it. If you really want to cosplay as a 50s housewife, get an education, get your own bank account, put off getting married till you're a little bit old.
I need to post this on my spam, not on my main, because I feel like I can't post this on my main, but we need to talk about that princess treatment, trad wife energy video that's going around where the woman literally does not open her own car door, does not speak to wait staff, does not order her own food, like, okay, we just need to chat. There's so much nuance to be had around the whole trad wife conversation because yes, aspects of being a trad wife are fun and fabulous and like Pilates mommy energy, not having to work, love that. But as with any extreme, once you go too far, it's like that becomes so backwards and up. Like, you can love aspects of trad wife lifestyle, but not subscribe to the entire identity. But I feel like the internet is so keen on its extremes. Like, you have to be a trad wife or you're not a trad wife. But you live in a time where you can have that princess treatment. God knows I love some princess treatment. Chronically passenger princess energy. Do not lift a bag when Sebastian's around. I love that. And I take full advantage of that. But also, we live in a time where we can literally be boss bitches, boss women. And like, we don't have to fight for our right to vote. We don't have to fight for our right to own a credit card, own land. Like, we can do these things. We live in a time where we can be boss women, so we should take advantage of that. I think we forget so often how far we've come as a society in our women's rights. And that was not long ago. That was not too long ago. So I feel like this whole epidemic of trad wives, it's getting a little bit freaking insane, to a point where, like, I'm concerned. And this whole dynamic of not speaking to the waitstaff, not speaking to the valet, or just like looking down in this demure, in my feminine type of energy. I'm sorry, that's weird. That's so weird to me. Weird behavior. And also, like, yeah, I love the idea of a man actually, no, I don't. I don't fucking love the idea of a man ordering for me, because what if he thinks I want the steak, but I get there and I'm like, actually, I really want the salad or the chicken or the fish. And then I have to sit there and eat steak because he ordered for me, and it's like, shit, I really wanted the chicken. Order your own damn food, please. It's not hard. Also, like, maybe that's just me, but like, I don't, whatever, that's my rant. Okay, thank you, bye.
Traditional wives, I talk to young girls, they're like, you still believe in women? And I'm like, no, it's not that. I 100,000% believe in women with every step and every breath I take. But I don't think until you've been helpless, responsible for another life, you understand what it's like to be trapped. And so you can't. People need to find their own journey.
If we lived in a perfect society where man goes to work, women take care of the house, it sounds like a utopia, right? And sometimes it works for you and then all of a sudden it doesn't. And then where does it leave women who have dedicated their time to raising families, to then, like, what happened to your career? What happened to your financial independence? You're so vulnerable. You're completely dependent. And then your choice is to stay in a potentially abusive relationship.
So many women do.
And so many women do.
I made that money that we lived in. I just wasn't looking after it because I was busy having babies.